Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. It's setting up to be another consequential week in Washington with just a few days to go before a possible government shutdown unless Congress strikes an 11th hour deal to fund it. We'll get to that in a moment, but we begin with New York Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the expanding auto workers strike. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
This strike now in 20 states. I know you are headed to Missouri later to strike outside a GM facility. The president goes to Michigan Tuesday. He only announced that after Donald Trump said he was going to UAW strike. Do you think injecting this high level of presidential politics complicates getting a settlement?
Well, I think right now we are in such a crisis in our economy, a crisis of inequality, that it is going to take a level of political and popular support, unlike that we've seen in a strike situation like this in recent and modern history, in order for us to get a breakthrough. What we've seen at the big three are CEOs giving themselves as much as a 40% wage and compensation increase, while workers have actually seen a real wage decrease over the last 10 to 15 years. And in order for us to break that norm, I think it's going to take an unprecedented level of involvement to make sure that workers get what they deserve here.
Shawn Fain, the head of UAW, said the president should join us on the picket line, but he's also said he doesn't necessarily want the White House involved in talks. He's indicated that could complicate things. Mm-hmm. How long do you expect the strike to go on?
Well, I think it depends on how long the CEOs of the big three want to drag this out. But what we are seeing right now is an absolutely astronomical level of public support for auto workers here in polling and beyond. And I don't think that dragging this out very long, I don't think that the threat of I think an artificial threat of raising car prices and all of this is going to really stick with the American people, who know that a lot of these price increases have not gone to auto worker wages. They've gone to CEO pockets. They've gone to stock buybacks, hundreds of millions of dollars in stock buybacks. So I think it is in the interest of the big three to make sure that we get to a resolution quickly. Mm-hmm. UAW has made their demands clear. Ford has already had progress and made progress, which is why we're seeing these strikes expand with GM and some of the other folks. But I think what's important here is that we keep the focus on wages and the benefit and the dignity of work for these auto workers.
UAW's president, when he was with us last week, said, when I asked him why the union hadn't yet endorsed President Biden, he said that has to be earned. Mm-hmm. That sounds like he's disappointed that party leadership is not doing as much as they could. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it always has to be earned. And President Biden showing up to the picket line on Tuesday is a historic event. We have never seen in modern history a president show up to a picket line like this. And I think it should be earned. It needs to be earned. And I believe that President Biden is working towards that, especially when he lands in Michigan on Tuesday, to earn that.
You know, one of the things that's happening in the auto industry, as you know, is this market shift and transition to electric vehicles. You were quoted back in July saying you look forward to buying a union-made electric vehicle, but you currently have a non-union-made Tesla. UAW already makes some electric vehicles. So yes. Why wasn't that? Is it a problem with the quality? Is it a problem with the style? Is the market just not there?
No, our car was purchased during the pandemic when before a vaccine had come out. So travel between New York and Washington, the safest way that we had determined was an EV, but that was prior to some of the new models coming out on the market that had the range available. But we're actually looking into trading in our car now. So we're looking into it, and hopefully we will soon.
I ask you that because Tesla's, Elon Musk, who has a majority share in Tesla, has said a lot of things against the unions. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these electric vehicle battery manufacturing plants as well are not unionized. Mm-hmm. So there's tension here.
Yes. Yeah. And it's something that I have been speaking with President Fain about, because one thing that we're all on the same page about is that we do not want the transition from a fossil fuel economy to an electric economy to represent an erosion in the unionization and rights of workers. And this is
to
something
do it quickly, that's essentially what's happening. A lot of
Yes.
these are joint ventures, these
Mhm.
battery facilities. They're not owned by the big three wholly.
Yeah, and this is one way in which we want to use historic legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act and others, which represents historic climate legislation, to incentivize everything from tax credits to federal investment to facilities, whether they're battery production or even mining sites, and from the beginning to the very end, to make sure that they're union, to make sure that we incentivize the production of these new technologies, to make sure that it also represents an escalation in rights and wages for everyday workers. In fact, I'm currently working on legislation, a resolution to focus on that. Everything from mining these minerals to battery production implementation, for that to be a union track, beginning to end supply.
And when you mention mining, you're talking about human rights violations in third countries.
Not only that, but also domestic mining that we have going on here in the United States, in New Mexico, and in
Talk to me about why it is important to you to have a candidate that's identifying explicitly as socialist or communist. Like, what does that mean to you substantively, not just as an add-on label?
I think it's, if you look at our platform, for example, we are I believe we're the only, very humbly, we are the only campaign with a credible anti-inflation program. We're talking about, if we think about the inflation reports that have come out recently, gas prices are driving inflation, and seizing the top 100 companies that include the 11 of the biggest energy companies with a combined $197.5 billion in profits. Seizing that could definitely help the inflation that we are currently suffering from. When we're talking about, exactly, only socialism can save you at the pump. Like, it gets better because the top 100 companies that include Walmart, Tyson Food, Amazon, Ford, and you could go up and down. Those would belong to the people actually producing the wealth. And we would control the ways in which that wealth is actually invested. That's socialism. When we're talking about healthcare, just seizing the top 100 corporation. A lot of these top 100 corporations include the largest health insurers, several of the largest pharmaceutical companies and drug distributors, the largest hospital company in Texas and Florida, CVS, Walgreens. What would happen if we were to do that? If that were to be in control, again, of the people that are producing the wealth, and not just the people that are accumulating wealth based on our exploitation. At some point, we have to say, we're not negotiating our exploitation anymore. We're taking over what belongs to us. And that's socialism.
We discussed this on the podcast, I think, last spring of 2022, precisely because of the conversation around gas prices. I think I had Matt Brunig and another economist on to talk about the possibility and the logistics of seizing oil and gas companies and implicitly other kinds of businesses that were engaging in price gouging and driving up inflation. And I direct people back to that conversation because I did think it was important it can seem very radical to the capitalist American ear. and having experts kind of walk it through and talk about examples of where similar action has been taken in other countries and the ways in which it's benefited the people and what pitfalls might exist and how to address people's concerns is what we're going to have to do to make solutions like that seem more plausible and at least on the table as part of our political discussion. Because it also is the case that there have been moments in history where even the threat of nationalization has forced some of these companies to be less greedy. And we saw that coming out of the New Deal era. So I really appreciate your willingness to go there and have that kind of a conversation. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Just on that, like Nixon, which was a conservative. In a moment of inflation, Nixon said, you know what? We're going to freeze prices. And any corporation that increases their prices is going to get summoned. They're going to, like, there is the possibility of controlling and regulating corporations. But for as long as we have this corporate duopoly that serves corporations, we're not going to be able to advance in this country. And so it is more than possible. There is a way of doing something about this inflation. There is something to be done around poverty in this country. There is something to be done around services that people so direly need. But the priorities are not there.
You mentioned the big three auto manufacturers and the ongoing strike. I wonder what you make of this push for Biden to visit the picket line. That's largely come in response to news that Donald Trump is going to be visiting Michigan, not going to the picket line, it seems, but going there to speak to some group of auto workers as kind of counter programming to the next Republican debate. Do you think it's a good idea for Joe Biden to go? Do you think it would be misleading for him to go? I mean, what do you make of the optics and the reality, the political reality of someone like Joe Biden's presence on the picket line?
Well, first, hopefully he doesn't fall asleep on the picket line. That's the first thing. And the second piece is, I think it's important to acknowledge things for what they are. Professional politicians, corporate politicians will show up and will promise a lot of things. I mean, he promised a lot of things. And some people may argue, right, that how can he? We're just coming out of a COVID crisis. We're just doing this. But we forget the record of Joe Biden. We forget that his record is brutal. It's criminal. He called for Social Security cuts 3 times. He attacked pensions. He has supported fracking. He has he is part of the warmongering class of people in this country. We can't forget that. So when people are like, but he's done better things, and anybody and everybody could do good things, and that is relative. That does not solve the scale of the problems that people are facing. So he could go, and he will go, and he will show face, probably smile, probably, get off script, cause some sort of, that will happen. But all of that is political theater. And it's political theater that we've seen, again, pop up every 4 years, because there's a lot of promises and then there's a lot of excuses for the things that cannot be done and they don't say they can't be done because we don't prioritize it. What they usually say is that we lack the resources. And who in their right mind can believe that there's a lack of resources in the wealthiest country in the world? Our problem is not lack.
Yeah.
We are abundant. We've stolen enough resources also across the globe to have enough. And so how are you going to say that there isn't enough money to have universal health care? How are you not going to say, how is there not money for infrastructure? How is it that we're not using the technology and the ways in which technology has advances for the benefit of working class people? That is ludicrous. So that they go, yes, they'll go, and they'll do what they do, which is part, again, of the political theater and trying to bribe people, working class people, into voting for them and have our people put their hopes and dreams and aspirations into the same cycle that has been happening historically. And so
I read, I believe in the Washington Post, a former Michigan Governor James Blanchard, in the context of this conversation about should Biden go or shouldn't he go, he said something that was sort of revealing. He said, quote, "I'm not sure the president should be marching a picket line. You start one and you have to do the others." So, I mean, it seems to be an acknowledgement that there is tension being put, there's pressure being put in the Democratic Party right now because some Republicans, at least Donald Trump, sees this as an opportunity for him to make a bid for working class voters that have been historically ignored by the Republican Party. It's a silly bid. It's a weak bid. I don't know how much any of the auto workers are likely to fall for it, but they're making a bid, which puts pressure on Biden to show up the same way that there was pressure on him to show up in East Palestine, pressure on him to show up in Maui. But if you do this thing performatively only because you're being pressured by Republicans, does that mean you have to show up to all of them? Meaning, does it mean you have to actually be a pro-union candidate and not just one every 4 years? Isn't that kind of a tell?
I mean, it's very telling. It's very, very telling. He is one, union busting.
Right.
Again, patterns in history.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the council, I'm here to speak today about the attack on the Nord Stream pipeline that took place 1 year ago on September 26, 2022. 4 explosions ruptured the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines that carried natural gas from Russia to Europe. It was the biggest act of industrial sabotage in human history, severing the main artery for energy from Russia to Germany, cheap energy that was critical to maintaining Germany's industrial base. We have heard every cockney and ridiculous theory on how this happened. Now, you don't need to be a genius investigative reporter to figure out who was the culprit of the Nord Stream attack. Incredibly, most Western news outlets ignore the fact that the President of the United States, Joe Biden himself, announced on February 9th, 2022, that he would in fact attack the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, saying, and I quote, "If Russia invades Ukraine, tanks crossing the border again, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We will bring an end to it. I promise you, we will be able to do it." Even with that pre-admission of guilt from the President of the United States, most of the Western press remained baffled as to who could have pulled off the greatest act of eco-terrorism in history. Well, luckily, we don't have to rely on my interpretation of President Biden's clear threat to attack the pipelines. We actually have Seymour Hersh, a genius investigative reporter with impeccable reputation and credentials, who reported that in June of 2022, United States Navy divers operating under the cover of a widely publicized summer NATO exercise known as Baltops 22 planted the remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning. And like all criminals, the perpetrators could not contain their elation over committing the crime. Shortly after the attack, many high-ranking U.S. officials could not help but brag about their achievements and expressed multiple times how they were proud of being able to put an end to the pipelines. Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland said, "I am, and I think the administration is, very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea. The United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, called it a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy. You have to be a paid liar to not acknowledge the hand of the United States in carrying out these attacks. Not only did President Biden declare he would do this, but high-ranking US officials have said similar things for years. We can look to 2014 when former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice stated that over the long run, you simply want to change the structure of energy dependence. You want to depend more on North American energy platforms, which is what this is really all about. And
welcome to a special edition of Straight Out of Politics. I'm your host for today. I'm CJ or Compton J in real life. Starting out with the banger. Jimmy Dore appears at the UN Security Council to give this speech on the Nord Stream pipeline, establishment corruption, and it was absolutely fantastic. Now, he had to tamper down the usual Jimmy Dore way of, very in-your-face sort of speaking style because he's in a different setting. So, of course, because a lot of us have heard a lot of what he's saying about the Nord Stream pipeline, but just packaged a different way. And he just repackaged it for a more professional audience, something that's going to be likely recorded in some sort of government log or something like that, like they do for C-SPAN. So this is great. Let's listen a little more and then comment, and we'll get on to some of our other stories. But let's listen to a little more of what Jimmy says here. He points out already how Joe Biden and Condoleezza Rice have already given signals, hints, have said how they wanted to transition from energy. And Joe Biden even takes it further to say, oh, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So could it be the ultimate, or one of the ultimate goals was to get rid of that pipeline? And the way to get rid of that pipeline is to say, hey, if Russia invades Ukraine, that shit's over. And what you do, you instigate or you entice Russia to invade. So it's very sneaky and sinister.
An economic war between the West and Russia in order to fill the pockets of rapacious capitalists who actually pull the strings of the US government and dictate foreign policy. So let's pull back and take a look at the context in which this pipeline bombing occurred, shall we? It's all happening under the guise of defending Ukraine from an unprovoked Russian invasion. But of course, that's only true if you start the story of the Ukraine war somewhere near the end of the story instead of the beginning, which would indict Ukraine, the US, and NATO. The US and NATO are to blame, which is why the Western media always leaves the origin of this conflict out of their coverage and leaves most people in the dark with a false version of the cause of the conflict. Most Americans believe that Vladimir Putin woke up one day and decided for no particular reason to invade Ukraine and start a war completely out of the blue. This is what supporters of the Ukraine in this war actually believe, because that's the only narrative they hear from their news media, which is funded by the people who profit off this war, the military-industrial complex, the fossil fuel companies in the West, and of course, Wall Street. To make a crude analogy of the Western media's coverage of the Russian invasion is the following. Let's say Vladimir Putin was standing on a bus stop and there was an old lady standing in the street and a bus was heading straight for her. So Vladimir Putin pushes the old lady out of the way of the oncoming bus and down onto the concrete sidewalk. The Western corporate media would start that story near the end saying, Russian president pushes old lady down onto the concrete. The same goes for the entirety of the Ukraine.
I think that's a very good analogy in this setting. because well, I don't need to give an explanation. I think it's self-explanatory, but I'm glad that he didn't just go off of the facts. He says, well, let me give you an analogy of what this would be like. So if you just can't see the because when you're in it, sometimes you can't see the broad concept. So that's why analogy is always good, and JB always has the best ones. But Jimmy right here has a pretty good one. Let's get back to the video.
Ukraine-Russian war. The Western media starts the story of the war at February 24th, 2022, which is definitely not when this conflict started. They leave out the 2014 coup of the democratically elected Ukraine government, orchestrated by the CIA in conjunction with Ukraine Nazis. They leave out the fact that the Russian-speaking ethnic population in the eastern part of Ukraine, known as the Donbass, didn't want to go along with the CIA Nazi coup government. And so the newly coup right-wing Ukraine government started shelling the citizens of the Donbass via their henchmen, known as the Nazi Azov Battalion, that ended up killing somewhere around 18,000 civilians in the Donbass. They leave out also, there was a peace agreement that was reached to end the shelling by the Ukraine government and the Nazi Azov Battalion, known as the Minsk Accord, because the people who broke that peace agreement was not Russia, but the Ukraine government and the Nazis. They leave out the fact that there was already an overall peaceful way to avoid war and the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of precious Ukrainians, which was recently admitted.
I really wonder, being that these people in the UN, they're really immersed in inside the Beltway propaganda, the bubble, if you will. I wonder if some of them, this is the first time they're hearing these details about 2014, 2015 with the US CIA backed coup of democratically elected Ukraine president. So I wonder if they're all like, what, or if this is kind of like, we already knew this. But I wonder how did Jimmy get here? I wonder, that would be a question that I would have. I wonder how Jimmy got it. Let me click on Steph's link here. It doesn't give like any other different information. All right, so it's not any other. I thought maybe any part of the link would be there, but you see that there. I think we're gonna end it there for Jimmy Dore. We got a lot of other stories to get to. Check out the video. I like this little meme here or graphic, but this is essentially what the story that Jimmy Dore told at the UN Security Council is. This story. This graphic kind of sums it up, and we're going to end it here. And that is that Joe Biden is the Nord Stream pipeline bomber. That's Joe Biden. So we'll end it there. Got a ton of stories I want to get to, and I'll sort of do my announcements and tell you what the stories are now. I'll do it kind of out of order. Went straight into that story. I didn't want to break up the mood of the video. So I'll do those normal things that I usually do in the beginning. Now, we have 375 people watching right now, but only 146 likes. So we could actually do another 200. Let's set our target for likes at 350. And I'll just round up. We have 150 right now. All right, so 350 is the target. Everybody hit that like button if you're watching right now. Here is the graphic for today's episode. We just covered the Jimmy Dore story on the far right, so that's Jimmy. And now, I won't tell you the order of the stories because I don't quite know that part yet. But what I can tell you is that the center story, the main discussion is not afraid of a second Trump presidency. So that is probably the main topic that we're going to be talking about. And it's a useful topic considering there is a GOP debate later today. And we also will be covering, the GOP debate later today. I can put up that graphic too. We have it right here. So make sure you tune in 8:30 Eastern for the GOP debate for second place. We'll also at the same time be also covering Donald Trump going to Michigan to speak to some people, to speak to some UAW auto workers. But back to this graphic and other topics. Ralph Nader, so coming from the left, Ralph Nader is now backing Joe Biden because of Trump. So he is on the Trump derangement syndrome. Then we're going to get to AOC and how Gray Zone reporter had a chance to ask her about the Ukrainian Nazis and the military, and she dodges the question and is acting like she's always rushing somewhere. They always got somewhere to rush to. So that takes care of the graphic. And then let's see if there's any other stories I got not on the graphic. I do want to knock out a couple of like smaller stories and make sure I cover probably the Ralph Nader story we'll cover and the AOC story we'll cover. Oh, here's another one. Sarah Ashton-Cirillo caught on video admitting Ukrainian Nazi issue in the military. So she is totally pranked by some people in Russia pretending to be somebody else. And so she thinks this is some sort of confidential conversation with a high-ranking military official. That's what she thinks. So she's being more candid, and it's not good. So there's that story. Then Emma Vigeland proves the NATO left are clueless about Ukraine. And actually, we're going to start. We will start there because I want to make sure we get those. All right. And that lipstick mark is not specifically for Anna. I'll show you. That's just the marking, meaning this is today's show. Yesterday's it was the 100%. I have different markings. My wife and assistant, she's not my assistant, but somebody else that helps. This is what I asked them how they to separate, and they chose the little lipstick mark. So no problem with the lipstick mark. But that's not specific to Emma. All right, but here's a chance for me to put these two stories together because she mentioned something about Ukraine before. Did I get a chance to cover it? And then I didn't get a chance to cover it. She was on the graphic, did not get a chance to cover it, and she's mentioned more items, or at least they clip more items, and we're going to cover that today. Actually, right now. So we're going to get to this story with Emma, and it just shows, and this is also a Nazi story. It's also a Nazi story. So the professional managerial class obviously don't have as big of an issue with Nazis as the rest of us, but we'll see, and you'll see what I mean in this clip. A couple of things more as far as our announcements. Our Substack is here. Join our Substack if you want to know when we go live, like when we send out, like today's episode is a little bit different time. My kids are home from school because of doctor's appointments. And then, what was I just saying? I forgot. And then later today, if you're on our Substack, you would get the notification for tonight's episode of the GOP debate. So join our Substack for those reasons. Here is our website. Make sure you check out our website. You can see a lot of things on there from some of our summits are all in one place. Some of our video content is there too. You can see some of our who we are, our backstory, our chapters, what our chapters are doing, the RBN library. So lots on our website you can check out, along with merchandise we now sell. And in our next break, I'll bring up that. I'm not going to bring it up now because I want to get through this story first. And then here is our email. If you needed to contact us, there is our email. Last but not least, Patreon. If you want to be a Patreon member, here is our Patreon link scrolling at the bottom. We have 5 tiers, I believe, one for each member. But you can also create your own tier. $2 a month, I think, is the lowest you could do. So if you can afford $2 a month and want to support us, please do. Let's get into the first story now after I check to make sure we don't have any super chats. I'm going to check to make sure we don't have any super chats. So Emma Vigeland, and this is really just everybody. Emma and the NATO left are in denial about Nazis. At least that's what they're trying to present to us, like they don't know much about it, about what's going on. But you'll see how this clip is not good for Emma, in my opinion, and it's not good. A good reflection of Emma, a good reflection of the NATO left. So we'll call this segment Emma Vigeland and the NATO left are in denial about Nazis. And another segment, so make sure you stay tuned, because AOC also is doing this. It's another story where AOC, I think I'll do this right after this. So I'll do a back-to-back stories of the NATO left denying or attempting to pretend like they don't want to know about the Nazis in Ukraine and the Ukraine military that they support in this war. Let's listen to this clip, and I have a second clip, an earlier clip of Emma talking about this. But let's listen to this latest clip of them speaking of her speaking on Ukraine and Nazis. Let's listen.
It just was a confounding choice to have that standing ovation happen, because this is just...
It was a confounding choice. So this is a choice that's not good. And that comment appears to say, I'm not upset about the Nazis per se. It's the fact that you shouldn't be celebrating them at the same time. They could be there for the war, but that's it. But let's listen a little more. I'll try not to stop it as much.
A gift wrapped piece of propaganda.
Oh, let me rewind it so you can get that full statement she gives here instead of a broken statement.
Was a confounding choice to have that standing ovation happen, because this is just a gift wrapped piece of propaganda for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
For all, anytime you see that spam on the internet about how like the U.S. is supporting Nazis, that is Russian propaganda.
She's calling it spam. I talk about that. We talk about this stuff. Nick probably talks about it a lot more than me. Is that spam? You see how the professional managerial class left, also known as the Bernie Sanders industrial media complex, also known as the NATO left. You see how they kind of just it's like this is a defense mechanism. I was trying to think of the word. This is a defense mechanism, because if they are to really go and search and find out that this problem in Ukraine with Nazis is a lot bigger, then that calls into question her support for anybody like the squad and their support for the Ukraine war. You see how it makes that so it makes that problematic. So you just go, oh, it's just Russian propaganda. I didn't look too much into details. Another clip I will play when she said, yeah, basically, I don't know that much, but yeah, something like that. Yeah, I heard something about that. So it's willful ignorance is the word. Willful or phrase. Willful ignorance is what they're trying to display.
And like to have this happen in Canada, and for this homework not to be done. I mean, it is confounding. It is also like, it goes to show that people need to be thinking a bit more critically about the some of that history here.
The homework's done. Like, they don't want to acknowledge it because, like, if this is from the National Post, which is, I think, a mainstream Canada publication. If Canada was ever going to embarrass itself by having its parliamentarians applaud the enthusiastic veteran of a Nazi combat unit, it's almost inevitable that the unit would be the Waffen SS Galicia Division. Long before Galicia Division veteran Yaroslav Hunka ever scored an invite to Parliament Hill, Canada spent decades overlooking and even providing official cover for an organization that would later claim to be full of Ukrainian freedom fighters, but was founded by Nazis, served under Nazi command, and fought exclusively to serve Nazi aims.
Yeah.
And this also, like, interestingly enough, this kind of blunder by the Speaker of the House of Commons in Canada, and Trudeau, obviously.
That speaker resigned, by the way. He resigned a day later, yesterday. So he's already gone. And she keeps calling the way she's describing this, it's weird way. She's calling it confounding. Because it's just calling it, it's just saying, I guess I don't know if she's saying it's surprising that the Nazis are there, or she's surprising that Canada didn't figure this out. Maybe that's what she means by confounding. Maybe it's that she's just surprised that they didn't do that. But so I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's give Emma the benefit of the doubt. That's what she means, and not that she's surprised or confused or surprised about Nazis being there. But let's continue. Some of you I know are already typing up. Don't give her the benefit of the doubt, but that's what I'm going to do.
Fighters, but was founded by Nazis, served under Nazi command, and fought exclusively to serve Nazi aims.
Yeah.
And this also, like, interestingly enough, this kind of blunder by the Speaker of the House of Commons in Canada, and Trudeau, obviously. Now, one of the Minister of National Education in Poland is calling for this man to be extradited from Canada.
Yeah.
Yes. So because of this, I mean, it's kind of a thing they have to do now that it's out in the open. They have to pretend like they care. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I have a receipt. Is that what you young people call it? A receipt on social media. I'm trying to see if there's a receipt here, and I do want to just quickly show the receipt of what it was just referred to in the video. That because of this is an unintended consequence. So this old Nazi thought that he was going to go to Canada and live out his years and not be caught for his Nazism. But as political, and a lot of people are reporting this from CNN to Daily Beast, everybody, Poland seeks extradition of Ukrainian SS veteran who was applauded in Canada. You notice they keep out Nazi out of the headline there, but it is I'm not going to read the story, but it is in the story. So just wanted to show that part. And let's get back to the video with Emma now. And Sam, this is literally probably the most I've seen them talk about Ukraine. Let me back it up a second and replay.
Commons in Canada, and Trudeau, obviously. Now, one of the Minister of National Education in Poland is calling for this man to be extradited from Canada.
Yeah. Good. I mean, and he should be. The point, though, is just like, there does need to be an understanding exactly of of that history. And just it's fine to, and
there needs to be an understanding of the history. That's distancing that history, or distancing Nazism or the Nazism that's happening from now. There's Nazis in Ukraine now. Let's continue. Where is the link here?
I think it is the moral thing to back Ukraine in their defense against a Russian invasion, but still fine to hold two thoughts in the same mind about some of the nationalism that is involved there, and being incredibly careful about.
You see how she's soft pushing? These are all defense mechanisms. She has to say some of the far right instead of saying Nazi. It's a defense mechanism. All of what this entire, I feel like this entire exchange here, even with Sam Cedar being very quiet about it, at least in this clip, maybe he says a lot more later. These are all defense mechanisms that they're hearing mumbers, mainly from the dumb left, from their perspective, of Nazis. Wow. Yeah, there's dumb left, so I'm not going to go check out any details to solidify what the dumb left is saying. I'll just say, okay, yeah, there is a problem. There is that, obviously, because the guys are wearing swastikas.
Same mind about some of the nationalism that is involved there, and being incredibly careful about not gifting Russians any further propaganda on this front, which is exactly what happened there. And I know Trudeau
not removing the Nazis, but stop bringing the shit up. That's literally what that means. Stop bringing it up, or stop bringing attention to it to give Putin propaganda material. This is the NATO left. What are we to do with the NATO left when it comes to war? So the NATO left showed up at the climate march. They all showed up at the End Fossil Fuel March. I'm sorry. I'm calling it climate. It is a climate. End Fossil Fuels. They all showed up. Even one of them in the speech, I think Jamal Bowman, acknowledges the military-industrial complex is the #1 polluter. He votes for Ukraine military. And let me just be clear. I've mentioned this all the time because this is just an astonishing fact. Abram tanks, and they're just arriving. Just a report just came out either yesterday or today. There are the tanks that we order for them. They're just now starting to arrive. The Abrams, and they take 60 gallons of gas per hour when they're in use. Per hour, per tank. And I'm not going to bring up the receipt, but I forget the article where it was. Maybe I will later. It's estimated 600,000 gallons of oil, fossil fuel oil, was used in the Iraq war. I think that's the estimate. #1 polluter, but you're at a climate rally, but you're supporting not only Nazis, but killing the planet. You see why they don't like to talk about this issue?
I had to apologize and everything. But it's been an interesting, I would say, week or so for Trudeau and the Canadian government on the international stage. Like, first between the Modi thing, very credibly accusing the Indian government of plotting an assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, and then turning around and accidentally giving Russians propaganda.
Yeah, there's a media failure here. This is a
How is this? How are you even classifying it as Russian propaganda when it actually happened and he's actually a Nazi? What are you talking about? He's actually a Nazi, and these events with the SS veteran or whatever the group is called, these events happened. Do you mean do not give people who are against this war more evidence that there's Nazis there?
From the National Post, which people say is a center-right publication. I still think this is right on the money. There are monuments to the unit, and Luke Savage tweeted this out too, at the cemeteries, both of which avoid any mention of the U.S. or SS origins, instead referring to it as a Ukrainian National Army. When this was pointed out by the Russian Foreign Ministry in 2018, documents later obtained by Post Media would show that Global Affairs Canada rushed to have the claim labeled as misinformation. The Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, Chrystia Freeland, has also played the disinformation card whenever Russia has pointed out that her own family tree contains a Ukrainian collaborator, although not one who served with the Galatia Division.
Yeah.
Terrible. Now let's play the video that I was going to cover before. This happened a few days ago, maybe 2-3 days ago. Yeah, 25th. So let's listen to this. This is originally the one I was going to cover.
And the entire Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation.
So I think somebody asked the question. This is a question from one of our audience members. I believe so. So let's listen.
Happy Yom Kippur. Did y'all see President Zelensky and the entire Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to the Ukrainian Nazi veteran? He was a member of the Waffen, I can never pronounce this stuff, SS Galiazin. What's your take on that? My take on that is I need to read more about that, but that sounds horrible.
It's a huge problem with Ukrainian nationalism. And
I need to brush up on that. She can send that money to them. I'll brush on it later, though, but I'll send the money now to Ukraine. You see, it's deliberately not wanting to find the information. I need to brush up on that. You think does that with that tone, does that give you any impression that she's really going to follow up on that? I'll let it play again and then let it finish.
Happy Yom Kippur. Did y'all see President Zelensky and the entire Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to the Ukrainian Nazi veteran? He was a member of the Waffen, I can never pronounce this stuff, SS Galiazin. What's your take on that? My take on that is I need to read more about that, but that sounds horrible.
it's a huge problem. With Ukrainian nationalism and that sort of stuff, and like I'm not interested in the sort of parsing of like well, they technically were an SS.
Now listen to what this guy says here, because he kind of like refocuses it, and that's his name is Matt something. And I haven't mentioned him in several months, but I gave him last year the trophy of the dumbest person in online politics, because he said some of the dumbest shit before when I was covering him. But I don't know if he'll have that this year. But listen to what he says here. He like takes it up a notch. You're like, no, this is some serious shit here.
They technically were an SS group that didn't do any sort of atrocities. Like, so that's not enough for me. We shouldn't be applauding people like that. And like, I think it's if you care about assistance to Ukraine in defending a invasion, you should be concerned about how often this stuff comes up, because it is the people that say it's not a problem are, in my opinion, maybe out of
He's talking about you, Emma. He's talking to you, Emma. You're just trying to say this is Russian propaganda. It's a small problem. He's talking to you. Your producer, I think that's what he is.
Concerned about how often this stuff comes up, because it is the people that say it's not a problem are, in my opinion, maybe out of genuine desire to help the defense effort lying, because it's clearly pronounced issue with the Ukrainian nationalism. Now, I don't think it's going to be helped by I don't think it's helped by the invasion. I think it's helped by
it's probably turbocharged by the invasion.
Right, like and wars and like longer sort of war invasion, if you want to call it, stands. Like, I don't think it's going to be helped by. I don't think we're going to see progress on that front.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Let's get out of here on the Ukraine. I can't stay here because the audience will eventually, I believe, start to turn on them, at least in the sense of the questions they would begin to ask. Like, wait a minute, because even if they like them, a person who is against war will just be against war. Even if I like you, hey, I disagree with you on this. Even if I like you in other areas. So let's now move to another quick topic. That was like 15 minutes. Let's move to a shorter topic. This one will be about 10 minutes. It's a shorter video. Actually, let's stay in the same window. Make this easier instead of resharing. So we'll go out of that one and we'll go into the AOC dodges Nazis. And I did mention this is where I was going to go. So let's go here. This is the gray zone video. I'm gonna play it in just a second, but let me get it queued up here. 1 second. And that's her right there. Watch when she's standing there, fine. When he says gray zone, she go, "Oh, I'm out this motherfucker." Right when she hears gray zone, she puts on the jets and be like, "Oh, I gotta go." You motherfuckers ain't about to do me like you did Rokana. You ain't about to call me out on this Nazi shit. So we're gonna get to this topic. It's kind of the same topic. It's a different topic, but it's kind of the same topic. It's the professional managerial class left, otherwise known as the NATO left, pretending that they don't know anything or know less about the Nazi issue, or downplaying the Nazi issue. So it's kind of a continued topic here. Let me put that super chat up. Thank you for the super sticker, I should say, from a Biden 71, always showing love to all of the left media outlets. Always seeing them in different chats. So thank you for that, sir. And now let's get right into the topic. Actually, let me see where we are with this here. We're at what? Let me do a like check here. So we're at 530 people watching right now. I really do appreciate everybody who's here. For you being here, if you would be kind enough to hit that like button. We currently have a goal of 300. Actually, we're going to change this goal to 450 since we have 500 people. So our goal is 450 likes. We can get there literally and still have people over. So a bunch of you could just hit the like button right now to get us there. Right away, we have 264. So that's 190. 190 of you hit that like button to get us to the goal. All right, so let's get to this tape or this clip here, and let's see what the caption says for Gray Zone. And the Gray Zone, it says noted anti-fascist. Let's make this bigger, and let's start it out a better way. Aaron, you can start here. AOC dodges question on Ukrainian Nazis, and it comes from the Gray Zone. So one of the Gray Zone reporters, not Max Blumenthal himself, but one of the Gray Zone reporters. Hang on a second here. His name is there, but I can't see it. Anyway, he says this: noted anti-fascist AOC trailed off and refused to condemn the standing ovation Canada's parliament and Ukrainian President Zelensky gave to a Nazi Waffen SS veteran invited by the Liberal Party of Justin Trudeau. The Gray Zones caught up with AOC on Capitol Hill. Now, you're going to have to catch it closely, but she's standing fine, and then she's going to take off right when she hears what this is about. She's like, oh, you're not going to catch me here. You're not about to throw me under the bus and have everybody coming after me on the left. So let's listen.
I catch you at the late
Yeah,
on the same
for
topic?
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Quick comment for the Gray Zone. Were you concerned last week when President Zelensky in Ukraine gave a standing ovation for an ex-Nazi war veteran in Canada?
Well, I mean, I think any situation like that.
It is concerning.
She is trying to buy time here. She is trying to buy time here. She's like, I think that she is calculating. Damn, there's a Ukraine war going on. You know what this is another tell of? I know I stopped in the middle of my thought. You know what this is another tell of? This is a tell that she knows there's a Ukraine Nazi problem over there with the Ukraine war. Because think about it, a person unaware of this problem wouldn't be trying to avoid answering a question. They'd be like, what? Canada did what? Yeah, I'd condemn that if they're unaware. But if you are aware of the Nazis in Ukraine fighting in this war in particular, then you have to do this, especially when you're now part of the establishment and you're not trying to walk on anybody's toes or have any gaffes about Nazis in Ukraine, especially when they're trying to get this funding right now. So that's where you see the pause. I mean, answering a question about Nazis, I can't think of another question that everybody should just have a quick answer. What do you think about Nazis? They're bad. What do you think about Nazis? Punch them. You get what I'm saying? Like, you don't need to What do you think about Nazis? Well, you know, why are your words so milquetoast about Nazis, AOC? Well, let's get back to the video and let's see if she answers that question.
Well, I mean, I think any
Look at the pause.
Any situation like that.
It is concerning.
Thank you.
She paused to buy time. I just need a split second so I can get in my car. I can give a very generic answer before I get in my car. Because if I answer it 2 seconds before that, when she's delaying in her language, if I answer that, he can come back. Well, wait a minute, that's not clear enough. Let me ask you a follow-up. Isn't that some bullshit? So what she did is she paused to prevent a follow-up question. Cowardice. But these are the people that's going to take over the Democratic Party. That is unfiltered cowardice. Let's see how long goes by when he asked the question.
President Zelensky in Ukraine gave a standing ovation for an ex-Nazi war veteran in Canada.
Well, I mean, I think any.
It's 13 seconds. There's 11 seconds left in the video. We're at second 13. The video is 20 seconds long. I'm sorry. Let me look at that because that's not the right math. There we go. We're at second 13, and the video is 24 seconds long. So 11 seconds left. In 11 seconds, she can answer that question, and he can follow up if the answer is not suffice. But you know what he can't do is you know why he can't have a follow up? Because she pauses.
Any
2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds.
It is concerning.
Thank you.
Just fucking cowardice. But this is the best supposedly the left has. Why don't you tell me you know the Ukraine military is filled with Nazis without telling me you know the Ukraine military is filled with Nazis? Why don't you do that, AOC? Just clown shit from a clown. And just to prove the point, this is going to be another segment, so I'm only going to show you a short part of this. Just to prove the points of Nazis, here is a spokesperson. This is Sarah Ashton-Cirillo, the American fired as the Ukrainian military spokesperson for threatening comments. This is that person. Let's listen. Caught in a video where she thinks she's speaking to a Ukrainian, a military official in the Ukraine military or the Ukraine, or in the Russian military or the Ukraine military. I can't remember. That's what she thinks. Why she thinks she can be more candid. Let's listen. AOC.
Terrible problem with most foreign fighters here because they are just a step above mercenaries, and they come here because all they know is warfare. And while I defend them in public, in private, I know many of them have very far right leanings. So there's some Nazi groups, and I've reported this. I also know that many of them are doing this because they have no lives outside of in their own countries. And so we have security risks, and more importantly, we have morale and psychological issues because foreign soldiers are here for the money. Most of them. Terrible problem with most foreign fighters here because.
Wait till I get to that story. The video is it's like a 15-minute call, a 20-minute call. It's like a 20-minute call that she's on with this person. And it's a well-known prankster that does this. Russian prankster, but he pretends he's Ukrainian. Yeah, it's a Russian prankster. They pretend. Weak. But in AOC, man, just another showing that AOC is nothing but a coward. And if we on the left are expecting cowards like AOC and Bernie Sanders, to be quite frank with you, then we're going to be in this place forever. of never getting anywhere and just keep going back to, oh, let's see if we can go through the Democratic Party. This is AOC. Now this is a good receipt here. This is back in January. Let's listen. They wore Auschwitz, I don't know how to say that, shirts, erected gallows, and tried to hang the vice president. Your continued excusal and denial of Wednesday's neo-Nazis presidents is abhorrent and dangerous. The most healing, see how she's talking about Nazis. She has no problem talking about Nazis here and using that phrasing here. Look who she's quote tweeting in this. That's Ted Cruz. She has no problem with it. But she knows she's part of the establishment. She knows she can't say anything against the war. That's one of the red lines if you're part of the establishment. And she's just not willing to cross that. But we think she's going to help us, or she's an ally. Just astonishing. All right, so let's move on now to one more short story before we get to the main story. I do want to knock, because a lot of these I haven't been able to get to. I haven't been able to get to some of these shorter stories. Which one do I want to get to? I did the Emma, I did the UN. Sarah, can I wait off? That's another Nazi one. So maybe we'll hold off on Sarah. That's the main one. Let's go to Ralph Nader. I'm gonna show you why I have that, and I'll bring up why I have that in a minute. The jank video that you saw there. I'm gonna bring up this Washington Post article in the background and see if I'm gonna be prevented from being able to use it. So that's what I'm doing in the background. But hang on a second here, everybody. Which one am I in? Okay, so let's go out of AOC here and let's go into Ralph Nader. So that's our next topic. And like I said, let's see if the article, I'm priced out of that article. So I'll bring that down. Let's see what other article we have here. Shit. Damn it. All right. Let's see if we got some quotes here. Yeah. All right. So this thread, this is a thread how I found out about the story, but we'll use this thread to kind of get some of the quotes. Let's see if there's another. Let's see if there's another article option here. So just bear with me for a second. Let me see if there's another article option. Because they lock us out, everybody. And I do have another article option, so somebody else tells the same story. So let's do this. And we're going to get to the Ralph Nader story. Another quick story before we get to the main story here, which is we're unafraid of another Biden or Donald Trump presidency. So let's skedaddle here. And I'm going to start with the Sabby tweet. And actually, I'm going to start here. So this is where we will start today's, or this segment. I do want to mention one thing, and that is the RBN Boston chapter, Sabby's chapter, is having an event coming up, and she's fundraising for it. So make sure you are retweeting her, because I see a lot of people that are on Twitter. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you're retweeting those items, because for whatever reason, those get a lot of less eyes to it. like things like when we're trying to reach out to the community, we get a lot less likes, a lot less retweets. So if you're in the audience right now, you follow a Sabby or any of us who have retweeted, because we've all retweeted or quote tweeted her tweet, please go and retweet that, and let's get the word out about this. So if we're going to be a community movement organization, you guys got to help us not just show up here to watch us, but you got to help us retweet those items. And again, you can get on our Substack if you want to get notifications when we go live. We're going to be having the Republican debate later on today. We will be covering, here is the graphic, GOP debate for second place is later today, 8:30 Eastern. I said 5:30, that's my time. So 8:30 Eastern, Nick and I, and maybe a guest or two, we will be covering the presidential debates later today. Also, check out our website. I won't do it now, but on our website, you can check out many things like the RBN library, like the chapters, and our newest edition, which is our merch store. So we now have RBN merch that you can go check out. Make sure you do that. And scrolling at the bottom there, you can see our website. Actually, I'll just toss it up really quick because I already have it saved. And so when you go to our website and you click RBN merch, this is what it looks like. There's 11 images, and those 11 images you can get either on mugs, the same 11 images you can get on tote bags, the same 11 images on like shirts and sweaters, tanks, tees, any of those items you can get. I like this one here. This here's a hoodie right here you can check out. This is our signature one. Get it in green. You can do a close-up and check out what the logo looks like. So check out our website and you can order that now. All right, so back to the stories at hand. And now we're going to go to the Ralph Nader story. I mean, and actually, let me set this up so that what I say is included in what I'm saying. So let's get back to this here. And Aaron, once I get this up here, Aaron, you can start the video here. All right, so another one bites the dust. And in this case, this same person bites the dust yet again. And what I mean by another one bites the dust, we keep seeing these people who are very good, have been good for decades. Bernie Sanders is another one. And then in their later years, or I don't know if it's because of their later years, but I'm just saying it happens to be in their later years, Bernie Sanders now, and also Nader, they start to waffle. They're not as, they don't stick to what you would think is their beliefs. As they're not as strict with their policy beliefs, I would say. Maybe that's the best way to say it. And Ralph Nader is just another example. So let's get through this quick story here. This is Ralph Nader. And this tweet here says Ralph Nader became a hack for the DNC, and this is what he's talking about. The Washington Post, and I can't bring up the article because it just brings up where you have to be a member. So I have a different article we'll bring up. But here's the Washington Post headline: Ralph Nader, the political firebrand, long estranged from Democrats, fears fascism will be on the ballot in 2024, and it must be defeated. AKA, he is going for Joe Biden. It says down here, Ralph Nader, wary of Trump, offers to help Joe Biden. Just another one bites the dust, man. It was Noam Chomsky. We had Bernie Sanders. Now we got Ralph Nader. And this is what Sabby says about that. She says he was praising Democrats a few months ago. He was praising Democrats a few months ago, had a feeling this was coming. Ralph should be supporting third party or independent candidates. And I could not agree more with my RBN sister. Sabi, and let's even back out even more to some more comments. And then Ajamu Baraka, who is an elder to us, and we consider him an elder here on RBN, along with Margaret Kimberly. This is what Ajamu Baraka has to say about all of this. Now, understand, Ralph Nader ran as a Green Party. He ran as a Green Party. He knows Ralph Nader, of course. But here he says this: the narrative that neoliberal Democrats are a counter to fascism is a dangerous fiction that mystifies real driving force of fascism. Right-wing neoliberals who actually control the state and are consolidating, merging of state and corporate power are imposing ideological conformity. So happy our elders, or the people that RBN considers elders, like the Margaret Kimberleys and the Jamu Barakas, haven't turned over in fear of fascism. And I'm going to be bringing up another tweet by Ajamu in another segment, in the main segment, where his tweet is where I got the "we don't fear another Trump presidency." It's from a tweet from Ajamu. But back to this part right here, he's spot on here. The narrative that neoliberal Democrats are a counter to fascism is a dangerous fiction that mystifies real driving force of fascism. And it kind of is a stronger version, what he's saying here, of what Dr. Cornel West says. And that why he's even now not part of the anti-Trump movement to stop him in supporting Joe Biden. Now he's saying third party. He's saying that's not good enough. Neoliberalism as an answer to fascism is not good enough. In the way that Dr. Cornel West, which I love how he says it, he says that's just a holding place for fascism. That's all that neoliberalism does. So he makes a great point here. But anyway, let's get to the article, and then we'll close out on this. Like I said, this was going to be a short story, or short segment, I should say. And here is the article on Nader's unfortunate shift. This is from Newsmax, and let's make this larger here. Ralph Nader stumps for... Oops. What just happened here? Do I go up or down? What? Okay, so that ad popped up. All right, so here we go. Newsmax. And let's go all the way up. Let's pause this video. Let's pause that video. I'll read the headline. It says, Ralph Nader stumps for one-time foe Joe Biden. Here. Let's read a little bit of, let me see what the voice sounds like, because you can listen to it, and it may have an advertisement. Let's see.
El calor extremo es peligroso.
No, it's a 30-second. I can't wait 30 seconds. It was like 10 seconds. I'll wait. So I'll just read it. Consumer advocate Ralph Nader still recalls Joe Biden speaking out to banish him from the Senate 23 years ago, but Nader is now working to help Biden get reelected as president, even if there will not be a formal endorsement, because Nader said former President Donald Trump should not return to the White House. Quote, "We are stuck with Biden now," end quote. No, we're not, Nader. But that's what Nader says. 89 told the Washington Post, quote, in a two-party duopoly, if one should be defeated ferociously, the logic is that the other one prevails. Nader remembers being blamed by Biden, then a senator, for Democrat Al Gore's loss to Republican George W. Bush in the 2000 presidential race. Quote, Ralph Nader is not going to be welcome anywhere near the corridors, end quote. Biden said after Nader's Green Party presidential campaign received 97,000 votes in Florida. Before that, Nader had been considered a policy genius, but after Biden's declaration, the Democrats parted ways with him. Nader no longer refers to Republicans and Democrats as Tweedledee and Tweedledum, but he said the Republican Party is behind the architecture of fascism. Now, Ajamu Baraka says that the Democratic Party is at the forefront of the cutting edge of fascism. Here's a quote. I know the difference between fascism and autocracy or autocracy, and I'll take autocracy anytime, Nader told the Post. Quote, fascism is what the GOP is the architect of, and autocracy, is what the Democrats are practitioners of. But autocracy, leaves out openings. They don't suppress votes. They don't suppress free speech. Really? Are we not seeing Joe Biden and the Democrats suppress votes? Isn't that what taking the Green Party off of ballots? Isn't that what that's doing? Isn't suppressing the primaries and not having primaries, isn't that suppressing votes? Nader? And suppressing free speech, have you heard of the Twitter files, Nader? Nader dismisses the chances that the Green Party can have an impact on the 2024 race, despite praises for its likely candidate, Cornel West. Nader also doesn't think much of the chances for Biden challenger RFK Jr., who campaigns on some Nader's issues, calling him a wayward talent who can't get out of his own way. Man, I would actually say that about you, Mr. Ralph Nader. Just terrible, but it just goes to show you when the going gets tough, the professional managerial class, some of them just don't have the stomach. And Ralph Nader is showing he's one of those people in the professional managerial class that just simply does not have the stomach. And let me correct his name here. Even though we're coming to the end, I correct his name at the end of this segment. But yeah, just terrible to hear this from Ralph Nader. Let me see if this let's pull this super chat in as part of this segment. And it says, Nader was always about getting power to listen to him. He ain't a communist. Yeah, he absolutely is not. Also, Google Kiwi browser to bypass paywall. Kiwi browser to bypass paywall. Let me do that. Actually, I'll do it after the segment. I just mean I'm going to do that soon. So I shall do that because I got to get past these paywalls. Just think about that. We're in a place where newspapers, I guess so. I guess it's similar to newspapers being 25 cents back in the day. All right, so we're gonna end there with the Nader, Ralph Nader segment, and now we're gonna get to this main segment here, and talk about a discussion. I feel like this discussion that we're gonna be having in here in a second is a discussion that we've been saying without saying the actual words, that we're not afraid of a second Trump term, because even by saying we are not for the lesser of two evils is kind of speaking to that. So let's bring up that's Ralph Nader. Let's bring up this one here. Not afraid second Trump presidential term. And I'll get to that video in just a second. And that's the other thing I'm going to get to with Ajamu. But it starts with this article here. And she is the writer of it. This lady, Molly Jong Fass. I'm going to pull up. She wrote an article in Vanity Fair, and she actually went on Morning Joe to talk about her article. So she goes on Morning Joe to talk about her article, and that's what that's the video I'm going to be bringing up. I think I actually already have it queued up here. But this is where we're going to be starting with our sort of headlining topic. I wouldn't say it's the most interesting topic. I'm not going to say it's uninteresting. That's not what I mean. Let me rephrase this. I'm not going to say it's the most popular topic out of all the topics. It just means it is probably the longest topic and the topic that we're going to spend the most time on. Currently, we're at 379 likes, and we have a target. We got up to 570 people concurrently watching at one point. We have 300 and I'll just say 70 likes. Thank you for those that have hit that like button. The goal is 450 likes. 450 likes is, oops, no, that should be wrong. This should be 9. 50 likes is the goal. So if you hit that like button, let's get to our goal. Much appreciated for those that are watching. Believe it or not, we have had over 1,300 people come through at some point and watch us. So thank you for the over 1,300 people that have come through and watched us at some point. Thank you for hitting that like button. Much appreciated. But let's get into this main topic. I covered that one. Let's delete that. I covered that one. I delete that. Just covered the Nader, so I can delete that. Covered Jimmy Dore. Let's get here. In Unafraid of a Second Trump Presidency. And I also want to put this name up of her article. And it says, what does it say? Let's not sleepwalk, or let's just say sleep walking. Great. Sorry, everybody. Let me get this set up right. Sleep. Oh, here, that's wrong. Sleep walking to another Trump presidency. There we go. Because we're going to be covering this article, it's kind of a response. The article is we must be afraid. And let's start here. Aaron, you can start here. So with the onslaught of several like very dependable polls, not dependable, but very high esteemed polls that are looked at as, wow, this is a legit poll. Washington Post, CNN, both painting very stark pictures for the re-election of Joe Biden. And coupled that along with the Washington Post, David Ignatia writing an article that Joe Biden should not run. All of this is about a panic. And this panic is about what we can do. Our regular propaganda is not working. And there's been several articles basically saying we need to turn the notch up on our propaganda. And the thing is, I'm thinking like, I can't even understand how this could be at a more high fever pitch than it is already. But that is literally what they're saying. They're basically calling for more censorship on how you cover Donald Trump in order to affect his poll numbers. Stop covering him like a regular candidate is basically what the call for in this article and a couple of other articles and the segment on Joe Biden. But let me just read the headline here. This is Vanity Fair. Let's not sleepwalk into another Trump presidency. The GOP, I'm reading the subheadline, the GOP frontrunner's treason talk makes clear yet again that he's a danger to democracy. And she spells democracy with a lowercase d. I find that funny. But this is by Molly Jong Fass. And let me just show you who she is. She's a regular, or she's been more regular. Let's put it that way. She's been more regular on Morning Joe. And this is her. This is what she looks like. If you may recognize her now that you see her picture. And we're gonna be going to a clip, the segment with her. But she's the host of a podcast apparently, and she is a an absolute she absolutely has Trump derangement syndrome, and she is absolutely a shit lib, and that's what we're going to be covering here. I'm gonna get to those in just a second, but it's important that we cover the article first. So let's do that. So let me bring up not the article, cover the Morning Joe clip first. So let's, Morning Joe is a regular here because we cover Morning Joe because this is the gold standard of propaganda in cable news is Morning Joe. The establishment on both sides, red and blue, watch Morning Joe. So that's why we use Morning Joe. Now, we're not going to read the article. It's kind of a litany of them just basically going through all the things that why he's scary. But they go through all the points in the segment. So we don't need to read the article because the segment really does cover all of what they do in the cover in the article. So let's listen to Morning Joe and listen to the cope here, or the fear and the panic.
We want to read now from Molly's latest piece for Vanity Fair entitled, "Let's Not Sleepwalk into Another Trump Presidency." And Molly, you write in part this: "The media isn't taking the former guy returning to power seriously enough. With the 2024 cycle in full swing, he's being largely covered like a normal candidate rather than someone
we can't have that.
To end democracy. One has to wonder why there isn't more coverage about Trump musing about sentencing the nation's highest-ranking general to death than, say, the age of the current president. Trump routinely attacked journalists during his 4 years in office, now eyeing a return to the White House. Trump is only ramping up the anti-press rhetoric by accusing a media company of country-threatening treason. As anyone who lived through the past 8 years can attest, you underestimate Trump at your own peril. Trump is not getting better. If anything, he's getting worse. I understand the mainstream media may be bored with the crazy, but our country is once again sleepwalking into disaster. And if journalists aren't clear about the stakes of a second Trump presidency, it will be, at least partially, our fault."
Well, and Molly, of course, we're quite aware here at this desk about Donald Trump threatening journalists. Mika talked about the face shaming episode. He accused me of murder 12 times and suggested that I be tried for murder. Continued doing that because he was angry.
And that's had consequences in our life.
It's had significant consequences in our life. Matt Gaetz.
I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has. Millionaire, privileged people. I'm sure you've had lots of consequences. You are going through it. I know. I'm gonna rewind it because I want to listen to what they say in the beginning again.
We want to read now from Molly's latest piece for Vanity Fair entitled, "Let's Not Sleepwalk into Another Trump Presidency." And Molly, you write in part this: "The media isn't taking the former guy returning to power seriously enough. With the 2024 cycle in full swing, he's being largely covered like a normal candidate rather than someone who tried to end democracy."
I don't know what they're watching. I watch all of these networks. That's all they have on these networks is that Trump is bad. That's all they have on these networks is that they're treating Trump not like a regular candidate. They don't go to his news conferences. They go away from him. They're already doing this. So this is why I say this is mind-blowing to me that they're saying what they're describing is not what I'm seeing. So that could only mean they think this needs to be turned up a notch. And I have an article that kind of couples with this. And that's exactly what they're talking about. And let's let's bring, actually, let me play a little more of the clip and before I bring up the actual article.
One has to wonder why there isn't more coverage about Trump musing about sentencing the nation's highest-ranking general to death than, say, the age of the current president. Trump routinely attacked journalists during his 4 years in office, now eyeing a return to the...
So you hear that? Instead of the age. So that's another thing. So it feels like this segment is an instructional segment meant, since they can't do what they do with the Twitter files, just tell people. This segment is meant to instruct the press on how to move forward with covering Trump. You're to tamp down your coverage on Hunter Biden. You're to, tamp down your coverage on anything outside of this guy is a deranged person that cannot reach the White House. Let's listen.
White House, Trump is only ramping up the anti-press rhetoric by accusing a media company of country-threatening treason. As anyone who lived through the past 8 years can attest, you underestimate Trump at your own peril. Trump is not getting better. If anything, he's getting worse. I understand the mainstream media may be bored with the crazy, but our country is once again sleepwalking into disaster. And if journalists aren't clear about the stakes of a second Trump presidency, it will be, at least partially, our fault.
Well, and Molly, of course, we're quite aware here at this desk about Donald Trump threatening journalists. Mika talked about the face shaming episode. He accused me of murder 12 times and suggested that I be tried for murder. Continued doing that because he was angry.
And that's had consequences in our life.
It's had significant consequences in our life. Matt Gaetz took conspiracy theories into Donald Trump in the White House, and Donald Trump gobbled them up, spit them out, and consequences be damned. But again, it does democracy a grave disservice when he's going after reporters, like you said. Also, he's now saying that he's going to ban entire networks that he doesn't like. And a couple of weeks ago was talking about arresting Democrats, just randomly arresting Democrats after he got elected president of the United States. I always say this is like Orban, but no, Orban wasn't even this outspoken when he was running for office. I don't think Erdogan in Turkey is this outspoken when he's running for office. This is a guy who is mimicking Vladimir Putin. Just
of course,
saying the
Vladimir Putin
out loud.
Yeah, it's really scary. His plans for a second term are autocracy at best. I mean, he is really scary at this point. And I think that a lot of the mainstream media, the straight reporters, are worried about looking biased. And so they don't want to cover Trump, because if you cover him in this way, it's accurate, you seem like a partisan because what he says is so insane. And
she's saying if you cover him accurately, he's so insane, you seem like a partisan. They're already doing that. So I'm curious to see what does this world look like if we had what you want to get, Molly? Like, what would that look like? Because to me, exactly what you're describing is what's already happening.
And I think that they are really worried. And look, conservatives have worked the refs, right? They have made it so that anytime there's a sort of unflattering Trump headline or unflattering, they say, well, this is obviously partisanship, and obviously the liberal New York Times, the liberal Washington Post. And so you really do see this sort of overcorrection. And I think that Trump is banking on that.
Do you hear the censorship in that? They don't even want you saying anything outside of negative about the Trump side. Like, don't reflect even in a neutral way. All of your reflections, all of your analysis needs to be from the perspective that this guy is dangerous. Don't even mention any sort of dull, nondescript wording. It needs to be bad or nothing. But we don't see this as censorship. We don't see this as a problem. The Democrats don't see this as a problem, or those are Democrats that they are on the team with the Democrats. You don't see this as a problem. It gets worse, people. They haven't even gotten to the worst part.
The liberal New York Times, the liberal Washington Post. And so you really do see this sort of overcorrection. And I think that Trump is banking on that. And I do also think it's hard to cover this level of crazy. The mechanisms in traditional journalism are not made for someone who has absolutely no regard for truth.
And Molly, over a decade, he has numbed many people, his supporters, but also members of the media. So when he puts up a post that says, Mark Milley, decorated Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman, in better days, as Trump put it, would be hanged for treason. People go, oh, there he goes.
And what's the problem? This civility politics thing, this is like, what did he say? What's wrong with that? That's how he feels about that guy. And what's your point? Are we as workers, as a working class and poor, are we supposed to care that a billionaire oligarch is threatening an imperialist, a person in the leadership of an imperialist army that's responsible for the deaths and murders of millions of people? What does that do? Don't give not a single F about any sort of thing that Donald Trump says about this guy. But you notice that a lot of the things they say about Donald Trump, it's about civility politics. It's about being in a refusing to use certain language, certain words in polite settings. And I'm not with that. And I think that's sort of what is appealing to about Donald Trump by the people who support him.
Again, it's not no. So I think it's, as to your point, it's on us, it's on the media, it's on everybody to not be numb to it.
Yeah.
Just every time he does something like that, just say, no, this is not normal. We can't have our politics, our country be like this.
And it gets lost in the shuffle. I mean, a week before, Trump went after liberal Jews on Rosh Hashanah. And that was like a crazy thing. You know, if you're with us, you have to be with us. If you care about Israel, one of the most anti-Semitic tropes that you can get involved in. And it just was lost in the shuffle. And I do think people are really scared of swinging at every pitch. But if you don't draw attention to this craziness, Trump will get reelected, and it will be in some way our fault.
I have thought about this a lot. Meaning, I think that it was sort of true even prior to Trump that that the media could overcorrect in terms of covering Democrats versus Republicans as to not appear biased. But do you think that I feel like there's also an element that people don't want to feel
like am I in a twilight zone? Like, do we think they really believe this? Do we think they really believe that the media is somehow covering Donald Trump in sort of positive light? This is a really bizarre segment. Let's continue.
Again, like that they're shocked by what Trump does. There seems to be a reluctance to be shocked because then you seem naive, unsophisticated. I'm not like, what do you think that is?
I mean, I think, look, Trump got through, $2 billion of free media. Those were the estimates after 2016. So you don't want to cover him in this incredulous way where you're like, Trump says something racist. Oh, and you repeat the lie. Like, you do want to focus on the kind of truth sandwich element. You don't want to quote him incredulously. But I also think, this is like
you see what I mean by this is really this is instructions for the media moving forward. And the reason I say that is the way they're talking, and also what show they're appearing on, which is Morning Joe.
911 for democracy, right? Like,
Totally.
there's nothing more important than.
Oh my God. These January 6th democracy people, Constitution.
$2 billion of free media. Those were the estimates after 2016. So there is, you don't want to cover him in this incredulous way where you're like, Trump says something racist. Oh, you know, and you repeat the lie. Like, you do want to focus on the kind of truth sandwich element. You don't want to quote him incredulously. But I also think, you know, this is like a 911 for democracy.
Oh
right?
my God.
There's nothing more important than keeping our democracy. And we saw with Trump's first season as president that, you know, that presidency barely ended by his own will.
John, Republicans, particularly in the House, who've looked the other way on all that Donald Trump has done from January 6th, the continued lies about the election, all these indictments have set up Hunter Biden as some sort of an equivalent to that. Press, why aren't you covering the Hunter Biden story the way that you covered January 6th?
You see why I say this is instructive? They're telling you what to cover and what not to cover, how to cover, what questions to ask, how to ask the questions, what answers will you accept. Now they're basically saying, stop covering a Hunter Biden story. People, man.
Barely ended by his own will.
John, Republicans, particularly in the House, who've looked the other way on all that Donald Trump has done from January 6th, the continued lies about the election, all these indictments have set up Hunter Biden as some sort of an equivalent to that. Press, why aren't you covering the Hunter Biden story the way that you covered January 6th, as if there's an equivalency there? That's how they're pitching it.
Yeah, it's whataboutism in the highest form. And to Molly's point, they have worked the refs. They claim bias. They claim prejudice.
Who are the refs? They've worked the refs. Who are the refs? Are you trying to say they've worked journalists? Are they actually saying that Donald Trump has friends in media and they're being friendly to him? And what if this is friendly, what we're seeing, what does it look like what they're describing? That's what I want to see. What does that look like?
From the media, if any time they've adopted Trump's philosophy that fake news does not apply to a story that's not true. It just applies to a story that's negative that he doesn't like. That is now the sort of ethos of the Republican Party. And look, this is a challenge for the media. We I think largely felt.
This is a challenge for the media. They're telling the media exactly how to cover Trump. This is an escalation in the fight against Trump. This is what they have decided to roll out after the panic over all of these polls that clearly show Joe Biden is going to lose. Joe Biden doesn't have any positives in the details of the poll. Joe Biden is upside down in everything. From the economy to how he's handling the Ukraine war, everything, inflation, he's upside down on everything. His 75%, are you concerned with his age? 75%. They need to replace Joe Biden.
Down on the job in 2016 in many ways, improved for 2020, no doubt. Realized you couldn't just take Trump live. You couldn't just put it in a tweet or a cable chyron.
He's saying that, yeah, 2016, we let the dogs out. 2020, we brought it back a little bit. We just can't go to him anytime, but we got to take it even up another notch here. And that's the call to the media. He's making a call to the media. It's time to turn this shit up. It's time to get way more it's time to be way more restrictive. It's time to be way more biased, if you can do that.
doubt, realized you couldn't just take Trump live. You couldn't just put it in a tweet or a cable chyron. You had to provide fact checking. You had to provide context. You sometimes had to say, no, he's lying right now. And I think that we have done that, but we have a long way to go. It's not perfect. We've never had a candidate like this before, an insurrectionist candidate, someone who threatened to overthrow our democracy, and he can't be treated just like anybody else.
I agree.
Yeah, you know, it took me a while. We hung up on him and started, you know, again, and I've got to say, I don't know how anybody, and I've been called and people have asked me my opinion because we've known Trump for a long time. How do you interview Trump? You start by asking the question that a lot of people ask. And you have to ask this question: is Joe Biden president of the United States? Do you still believe that Joe Biden? And then you just hammer him. And you can't let it go.
Go back
on
to January 6th
economic
is what his
development.
suggestion is.
Well, this guy is still talking about stealing democracy and overturning a presidential
Because that's
election.
an acceptance of a lie. And you can't do that. That's a disservice to viewers or readers.
Yeah, we saw what happened when Mehdi had Vivek on. And he just kept going back to the same question over and over and over again because Vivek was just shooting all over the place, trying to distract, trying to move on to something else. We'll throw an insult out here. It's pure. It's straight out of the Donald Trump playbook. And you just can't do it. You have to stay focused on the issue at hand. And as we move forward, it is true that Trumpers have played the refs. And they're constantly playing the refs. And so, you know, Molly, we got to go, but I just want to go back
I
to
don't understand who are the refs? The refs are you guys. Are you guys giving him positive coverage? Is CNN giving him positive coverage? Is WAPO giving him positive coverage? Are you trying to say the Kristen Welker video on Meet the Press? Remember, they're asking for her head on a plate for simply having him on.
This one
but these people aren't the problem. They aren't the ones who are exhibiting the fascistic behavior. Attempting to jail your political opponents, that's fascistic behavior. Telling people not to put opposition on in order to get your candidate elected, that's fascistic behavior, Molly.
It's just the insanity of the playing of the refs on like the Hunter Biden laptop. I had somebody very well respected who in the media who, you know, likes to think of himself as a truth teller. Right? Oh, I'm going to tell the truth against what the mainstream media says. I'm progressive, but I'm a truth teller, right? And so after Donald Trump was contesting the election, he goes, yeah, that's bad. But what about Hunter Biden's laptop? I'm like, what? I'm sorry. We're in the middle of an American presidential election being stolen. Yeah, you know, there have been articles written about Hunter Biden's laptop, and I sent him like 4 or 5, articles about Hunter Biden, and sending articles that have been written in the past about Hunter Biden and some of the questionable business dealings he did going back to 2019, 2020, before the Biden campaign. And then after January 6th, the same emails. Yeah, you're talking about this so much. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? Well, I mean, you saw what YouTube.
That's because January 6th was a joke. And you guys are overplaying the idea that the majority of people buy that garbage, and that's just garbage. If the FBI, who was in the crowd, is not center stage at any January 6th trial, it is a joke. A joke. But I don't want to, I'm going to stop it here so I can get to the article because just for the sake of time, I won't finish that there. There are some more good parts of that video. So if you have time, go watch it yourself. But for the sake of time, so I can get through some of these, I do want to get to this accompanying article for this segment, because it speaks to what I was saying. This is the article that's telling media to do the same thing. You're being too nice on Donald Trump. You need to turn this shit up. That's literally what is being said in this article right here. And let me read. That's the writer right there. U.S. news organization have turned Biden's age into a scandal and continue to cover Trump as an entertaining sideshow. I don't know. What are they watching? What are they watching? Christiane, I'm poor, has reported all over the world. So she recognizes a democracy on the brink when she sees one. Right. Last week, as she celebrated her 40 years at CNN, she issued a challenge to her fellow journalists in the U.S. by describing how she would cover U.S. politics as a foreign correspondent. Quote, "We have to be truthful, not neutral," she urged. Quote, "I would make sure that you don't just give a platform to those who want to crash down the Constitution and democracy. Don't bring those people on to talk. Stop talking to people." It's an important call to action, but so far the American press is failing to meet its responsibility to adequately emphasize the stakes of the coming election. Here's some of what is going wrong. I can't believe this is their take about U.S. media. This is let me just read it. This is weird to me. Here's their first bullet point. News organizations have turned Biden's age, granted a legitimate concern, it's a legitimate concern, into the equivalent of a scandal. Now, how would you turn reporting the news that by your own definition is a legitimate concern? How is it a scandal just reporting it? How is it a scandal that you ask a question about his mental acuity and you get the results you get, but now it's a scandal for simply reporting on it? Or are you suggesting they need to report on it in a different way? In the way that the Biden administration kind of tried to flip this age thing. Make it more like a Ronald Reagan thing where, yeah, I'm old, but I'm just going to make fun of it and make it seem like it's not a big deal. So basically to trivialize the issue with his age. And the fact that they've been saying it's a big issue is what they are saying is equivalent of a scandal. In story after story, headline after headline, they emphasize not his administration's accomplishments, but the fact that he's 80. That's because they're not supposed to be advocates of the president. So if they're going to emphasize his accomplishments instead of just reporting news, then people are going to call you in the bag for Joe Biden. So that's not going to have a good result. But let me continue. A New York Times headline during his recent diplomatic mission to Asia epitomized this, turning the president's joke about jet lag into an impression of a doddering fool. Quote, it is evening. It isn't. I'm sorry. It is evening, isn't it? An 80-year-old president whirlwind trip. This is what they have a problem with. This is what they say is a scandal about his age. That's the scandal. Or that's scandalous to them, I said that way. Vox nailed the problem. Quote, this is Vox. I'm sorry, Ian from Vox, and that's Vox, V as in Victor, OX for those that's listening. Quote, I worry that the Biden is old coverage is starting to take on the same character as the 2016 but her emails coverage. That's absurd. Find something that is genuinely suboptimal about the Democratic candidate and dwell on it endlessly to balance coverage of criminal in charge of the GOP. These people, man, these people are literally saying to go dark on Trump other than only like not even opinions. Like when you go to the round table, they're reporting your opinion is not to reflect anything but negative, not even neutral. I continue. Here's the second bullet point. The evidence-free Biden impeachment efforts in the House of Representatives are presented to the new consumer without sufficient context. In the first round of the headlines last week, most news outlets simply reported what Speaker Kevin McCarthy was doing as if it was completely legitimate. The results of his likely high crimes and misdemeanors. The Washington Post presented it like seriously. Quote, Kevin Hart directs House committee to open formal Biden impeachment inquiry. There's a problem with that. There's a problem with that. So you see how that's kind of a neutral. He's there just basically saying this is the person who did it. That is a fact. He directed a House committee. That is a fact. To open a formal impeachment inquiry. These are all factual words without adjectives added to color what they're saying. That's a problem. Adding in a credulous line, the inquiry will center on whether President Biden benefits from his son's business dealing, end quote. No hint of what is really happening here. You're supposed to give your context as a reporter now. In this case, the New York Times was a welcome exception. This is the New York Times. So this is the New York Times version of this, and they're saying this is what we should be doing. McCarthy, facing an ouster and a shutdown, orders an impeachment inquiry. That's more like it. So like I said, this article, along with people in media like Morning Joe, and that's an important show for propaganda, they're saying we need to turn the screws on our propaganda and turn this shit up. And that's literally what they're saying here. Now let's get to the second part of this, which is we're not afraid of a Trump presidency. And I'm going to go to a tweet by Ajamu Baraka that talks about this. So here we go. We showed you that that was the article we just read, the one I was just reading from The Guardian. And now let's go to this. This is Ajamu Baraka, and he's quote tweeting a video that Nick did, and it's a video Nick did about Bernie Sanders. Yeah, about Bernie Sanders. So this is Ajamu Baraka, but he talks about what we're talking about in this segment, and let's blow it up so I can read it. RBN, you should learn not to hold back. And he's being sarcastic in the video because Nick goes hard. The Democrats are pathetic. Black people are not afraid of Trump or the power of colonial capitalist rulers. If Sanders had some principles and courage, he might have been the nominee of that party, but he was not willing to fight. And I'm zeroing in on this. And because I don't feel it's just black people, but we are not afraid of Trump. We're not afraid of another Trump presidency. You know why? Because whether Trump is in office, guess what's going to happen? Our Boston chapter is still going to be doing community outreach. Regardless if Joe Biden is in office or Donald Trump is in office, the KC chapter is still going to be giving out school supplies to the community. Regardless if Donald Trump or Joe Biden is in office, Tour for the Poor will still be traveling around feeding unhoused people. Regardless if Joe Biden or Donald Trump is elected, JB out in at our Orlando chapter will still be passing out hygiene kits to the unhoused. And lastly, I'll go to me. I think I covered everybody. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether Joe Biden or Donald Trump runs the presidency, because out here at the Long Beach chapter, we're still going to be dropping off diapers to women's shelters. We're still going to be feeding people down on Skid Row in LA. We're still going to be doing all of that. It doesn't matter which one of these clowns are in the White House. It doesn't matter which one of these parties are in the White House. We survived regardless. Didn't we survive the first Trump term? Aren't we surviving this first Biden term? Which, I mean, it's in a lot of ways is measurably worse. Now, you can say it's happenstance or they just decided to get greedy at this time, but inflation is one. The inflation rate when Trump was president wasn't as high as it is now. Funding for ICE is up. Funding for the military complex is up. We're going to be in a war in 2025 with China. We're in a war with Ukraine right now, on the brinks of at least a nuclear fight or jousting at least with China and or Russia. So either party being in office, it doesn't make any difference. And I hope that the working class and all of the working class and poor people that are watching understand that. Stop letting these shit libs, these cowbell leftists, these cowbell liberals who support the Democratic Party, stop letting them talk you out of your vote and who you should be voting for, which is whoever you want to vote for. But don't let fear change your vote. Don't let, I'm in fear of Donald Trump. To do what? That's rhetorical. I'm not looking for you to run a litany of your nonsense shit libs. But the point that I'm making is that nothing changes for the average person. Just like nothing changes when they get in office, your minimum wage didn't go up. Your taxes didn't go down. Your bills didn't go down. Food prices didn't go down. Just like that, nothing changes in a positive way. Nothing is really going to change in a negative way also. Donald Trump if he gets in office, they're still going to be perpetuating the same wars that we're in now. Donald Trump gets in office, we're still going to have the same horrible immigration system we have now. If Joe Biden gets in office, we're still not going to have the right to an abortion federally with Joe Biden in office. Don't let them pretend to you like if he gets in office, somehow it's going to be different. So I'm saying all of this to say, you live this. We as people, we live through these presidencies. Stop letting them describe a reality that doesn't exist for you. Whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, nothing materially changes for you. Don't let them tell you it does. Oh, he gets in office and he tweets a lot? What does that do for my paycheck? What does that do for the price of eggs? Does that do anything? Oh, he gets in and he says racist shit? Okay. Joe Biden was a major backer or a major architect of the 1994 crime bill. So, yeah, Joe Biden's not saying racist shit, but Joe Biden has precipitated racist shit like the 1994 crime bill. So you got a guy that's espousing racist shit and tweeting racist shit. Then you got a guy that's putting racist shit into legislation. You see how it doesn't make any difference? Stop letting them tell you it is. We don't have a democracy, so there is no democracy to end. And that's my rant. I know it was a long one, but this is a time we're going to revisit this again because this is the topic I feel like needs to be talked about more often because they keep trying to push this fear mongering, this boogeyman about Donald Trump. We need to let them know, you need to change it up. That's not going to work. Okay. Because I don't care whether he wins or not. Like, what democracy are we saving by not electing Trump? What democracy? The democracy that puts a knee on George Floyd and kills him? The democracy that have Nazis praising Joe Biden in Florida? The democracy that has Joe Biden deporting more people? The democracy that has the chaos and crisis that's going on at the border? The democracy that hasn't lifted the minimum wage that's still at $7.25? The democracy that undermines unions? The democracy that still has slave patrols that's going out killing black, brown, indigenous, and poor white people? What democracy are we wanting to save here? Can somebody tell me? Which one? And I think I'm going to be winding it down here. All right, I'm going to be winding it down here. I am going to play this video just so I can catch my breath that he's commenting on, and just so you can see what is Ajamu Baraka commenting on.
Bernie Sanders pulled one of the biggest political con jobs of the modern era. Bernie Sanders took hundreds of millions of dollars from ordinary, desperate people and promised a political revolution. Now he's nothing more than an ordinary pro-war Democrat. Bernie Sanders had potential to be a leader of a movement, but instead he reduced himself into being a weaselly, spineless, little PR puppet cuck of the Democratic Party. Now, in light of a surging third-party potential candidacy of Dr. Cornel West, Bernie's old friend, Bernie Sanders is throwing cold water and telling people to support the Democratic Party. According to Bernie Sanders, this is once again the most important election of our lifetime. According to Bernie Sanders, if Trump wins, it will be the end of our democracy. Bernie Sanders sounds no different than the average Morning Joe, Rachel Maddow, MSNBC shitlib at this point. Bernie, did you forget that you ran against Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and they rigged both primaries against you? He now propping up the system that is rigged against us? What a fucking coward. The job of Bernie Sanders, AOC, and the squad is to shift what it means to be a socialist to the right and create a weak, ineffective, spineless left-wing movement.
Facts, Nick. And Nick and I will be here in a little less than 2 hours back here covering the presidential debate. So I'm gonna be getting out of here in probably another 20 minutes or less. So actually, let me see if there's one more thing. There might be one more receipt for this part. Let me just make sure in this bookmark there is nothing. Oh yeah, here. Even so, even this guy rants. So here is Cenk Uygur ranting, getting mad that Joe Biden won't back out, and he's fearful. He's like, listen to this. This is a angry rant that fascism is going to return to the White House if Joe Biden doesn't drop out of this race. And the professional managerial class is afraid of another Trump presidency. We're not. The working class and poor, we're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What are you talking about here? Same bullshit capitalism we're going to have regardless who's in power. But you got to hear this rant as a part of this segment. You have to hear it.
Goddamn monster. And Democrats, wake up! Wake up! This guy's talking about executing people. And you're like, well, we wouldn't want to offend Joe Biden. He's definitely going to lose to him. But hey, we bow down to authority. Joe Biden's ego demands a second term. Screw Joe Biden's ego. We're going to lose the goddamn country to a tyrant and a dictator who's...
We're going to lose the country. This is clown shit. This is clown shit. But I'm going to rewind it because it's funny. This is complete acting. This is acting right here. I'm going to try to let it play. It's a minute and 32 seconds. Let's see if I can get through.
Goddamn monster. And Democrats, wake up! Wake up! This guy's talking about executing people. And you're like, well, we wouldn't want to offend Joe Biden. He's definitely going to lose to him. But hey, we bow down to authority. Joe Biden's ego demands a second term. Screw Joe Biden's ego. We're going to lose the goddamn country to a tyrant and a dictator who's telling you ahead of time that he's going to murder people. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Jesus Christ. And Merrick Garland, you're the worst attorney general ever. What did you wait 2.5 years for? That wasn't serious enough to bring the case? You goddamn loser! You incompetent.
I didn't make it. I got to 42 seconds. So this is Cenk Uygur and TYT falling in line with the Democratic Party narrative. That's what they're doing here. Trying to pretend like this is about Joe. This is him falling in line with the narrative that democracy is about to fall off a cliff if Donald Trump is elected. So his audience, they're eating this up? Is that what y'all are telling me? His audience buys this stuff? There's nobody in the audience saying, hey, Cenk, what is wrong with you, sir? Neoliberalism is not a freaking cakewalk compared to a Trump presidency. Let's get back to Cenk.
Selfish prick! Merrick Garland.
This is hard to watch because this is such acting.
Serious enough to bring the case? You goddamn loser! You incompetent, selfish prick! Merrick Garland's the worst. They should have brought this case on day one. Day one. Oh, well, he's among the elites. He's a former president. None of us want to be held accountable. So we'll wait to see if he's going to run. The worst. Democrats, stop being such losers and pick someone who could beat the tyrant. Otherwise, we're going to lose the country. And they're going to put you in jail, you dumbasses. Wake up.
Thanks for watching.
That's Cenk. Being the court jester that he is, the $20 million court jester. That's who Cenk is. And he was putting on an obvious show. That was an obvious show by Cenk. Thank you here, Justin B, for this super chat. This rant was spot on, CJ. Solidarity with the poor and working class is key. That's what keeps us alive through these administrations. And that's what I was speaking to. Like, for poor and working class, there's no difference in these fucking terrible presidents, these warmongering presidents. Nothing changes for us. The $7.25 is the same. That's the minimum wage. That's the same, sir. Donald Trump or Joe Biden. The police beating black, brown, and indigenous and poor white people's ass, that's the same. The ICE facilities are the same. The crisis at the borders are still the same. Immigration not being solved, still the same. What's going to literally change? He gets in office and what? Tweet some racist shit? Back some racist people? At best, what are the good things that we could possibly get out of a Trump presidency? Maybe not another war? Maybe not a little less willingness to go into another war? I don't know. I'm just saying, can it be worse than Joe Biden? The only person I could think could be worse than Joe Biden, maybe Hillary Clinton. More hawkish. This super chat here, standing ovation by AOC and Trump. Thank you for that super chat. Let's see here. What's up, everybody in the chat? I know I haven't been in the chat. I was trying to get through all those topics really quickly. So that's why I didn't get through to the chat today as much as I want. Now, I got to the super chats, but I mean, usually I put up a lot more comments. I was just trying to stay focused on getting through these. But let me see if I have another. I think I have one or two more stories that I got written down that I haven't covered yet. I'll cover the Unafraid of a Second Biden presidency. I covered the Nader backs Biden, AOC dodges Jimmy Dore. I covered Sarah. I got to cover that one. And I covered the Emma Vigeland. So the only thing I have left is the Sarah Ashton-Cirillo. And this is a interesting, I guess I'm glad I'm ending with this story. It's on the funnier end of things. And let me, where am I? Close that. Let's stay here. And then we go down to Sarah. I'm not going to listen to the whole thing there, but I'll listen to that one. I'm going to start with this thread, and we're going to listen to a little bit of this, but I'm going to go with this thread because he has it broken down here too. So just in case, because we're not going to listen to a 15-minute video. We might listen to more than about half of it.
The situation with my youth.
So, but let me give the backstory first. So, and let me get this all set up. While I'm getting this segment set up, make sure if you have the funds to afford, become a Patreon member. We have 5 tiers, one named after each member. It's a special name for each member. And then there's a tier where you can create your own. And for as little as $2, you can become a Patreon member. The other thing is we hit our first target on our likes, 450. Now onward to our next target, which is 550. We're at 447. That's literally less than 100 people that are currently watching right now. You just got to hit that like button to get us to that goal. Before our last segment, we've had over 1,700 people come through at some point to hear what we or watch the stream. So thank you for everybody who has come through at some point to watch us. And now we're going to get to this other thing. That's our website scrolling down at the bottom if you wanted to check that out also. Now let's close that. Let's get that. Now let me get the right. Sarah Ash, the right real low. I think that's how you say it. Enter up. Sarah Ashton-Cirillo. What is this? Oh. My bad, everybody. Just had a brain fart right there. What am I covering? Oh, Sarah. Okay, caught on video admitting Ukraine Nazi. Okay, now I know where I'm at. All right, now I got it. So caught on video. That's all I'm going to say. And Aaron, you can start the segment here. Now, everybody knows, if you've been watching some of the propaganda of the Ukrainian proxy war, you know who Sarah, I'm going to bring a picture of her up here. You know who Sarah is. Sarah Ashton Cirillo. This is a U.S.-born citizen out in Ukraine who went over there supposedly as a quote-unquote journalist, then ended up enrolling in one of the armies over there, and now is sort of a spokesperson, or has been. Now, she was suspended from her spokesposition because of something else last week, and we covered that, or 2 weeks ago. But now she's back in the news for this video here. Now, she was caught on video, or had a prank played on her where she thought she was speaking to some high-level official when in actuality, she was speaking to some pranksters. But they got her to admit to a lot of things. And let's start with this thread here from Wyatt Reed. After threatening to hunt down So-called Russian propagandists around the world, Kyiv's infamous spokesperson, Sarah Ashton-Cirillo, was fired, then rehired. Now Cirillo is likely to fire once again after being fooled by Russian pranksters posing as former Ukrainian president Petro P. Now, so these are Russian pranksters posing as a former Ukrainian president. That's why she feels comfortable in speaking freely. Now, in this conversation, these are some of the things that goes on in this conversation. Sarah admits their company has been reduced to 14 soldiers by disastrous counteroffensive. Claims of Russians are not European, Russians are Asians. Ultimately, they do not come from the Mongols. They come from the grouping of people who want to be slaves. Here's another quote. And then they put the quote in there, and we'll get to that in a minute. Or actually, I can read it. Quote, I wish the rest of Europe and Western world understood that we are protecting European values and Western values. These people, Russians, are not humans. They are enemies of humanity. Claims of Dugin's daughter, quote, wasn't some woman who accidentally killed. This was an evil creature who died a death they deserved. Also in the video, admits decisions to fire Cirillo was political and came at the highest level, I would assume, so high that it didn't come from the Ukraine itself, but New York. Also in this video, claims that they were fired because they served as expert witnesses in a trial of a fellow U.S. citizen, Gonzalo. All right, I think instead of reading it, let's listen to some of what she says in this video. Let's play it.
Unit currently, I'm still part of them, is very bad in Bakhmut, and I think they're going to be disbanded soon. We're down to only 14 people in the company, and so while the entire battalion and brigade were friendly, I can't speak to what the new command structure will be like after the situation takes place, when they either get moved or they have to bring new people in.
And so what do you feel about Russians orcs now? So I think that it is part of Mongoloidans.
Sir, you have a European party, and the reality is Russians are not European. Russians, as Mr. Danilov was clear to say, Russians have a different culture. Russians are Asian, and ultimately they do come from the Mongols. They do come from a grouping, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy, of people who are wanting to be slaves and want to be led just as it was from the days of Genghis Khan. And so I wish the rest of Europe and the Western world understood that Europe ends at Ukraine. We are protecting European values and Western values the same way those did hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years ago when the Mongols were coming in. While I don't know every Russian, I will say that what's happening in the Kremlin and what's happening to every Russian that supports Vladimir Putin's decisions are not human. These people are not human. They are enemies of humanity, in fact.
Now we have some difficulties. So what is your opinion about counteroffensive now?
For well over a year, we've been asking our Western partners since the days of your presidency, sir, to make certain that they understood the threat of these non-humans, and they didn't want to understand it. They don't understand that we can only win by winning. And so they're being cautious based on what they know. The Kyiv Independent, sir, stated that there was allegations that 100,000 Russians were gathering in Kupiansk and Liman directions. And to me, this showed a very big problem. If our own media calls it allegations, even though two of our generals, who are not political people, said this was the case, imagine what we must be fighting in the Western media. I have a video coming out very soon where Crimea
basically saying they're not turning up to propaganda to a higher level. This is clown shit. Now, if you don't, this person, I have to tell the story again. This person, Sarah, reached out to RBN to be one of our panelists. This is like, it has to be almost over a year and a half ago. DM me back when I put out the call. Hey, looking for people to want to be on some panels. Got a group of people. She was one of them. Went back and forth asking questions and this and that. At that time, her whole thing was, you should Google me. She told me, you should Google me. I went viral. So she went viral for some other thing back when she was a Democratic sort of darling, but it just blows my mind that this person was almost a part of an RBN panel, like regular reoccurring panel. And in the DM, she was answering the questions because I was like, we're anti-democratic and we're anti-GOP. And that's where we waffle, why she ended up not, because she was not as strong on that as I felt she should, anybody being a part of RBN should be. And that's why I never added her to the panel.
Announced that they had 30% less visitors for poisonous jellyfish. And yet the Daily Telegraph ran a story that people were still visiting Crimea. So we're having struggles on the information warfare front. And then we have the morale issue, sir, where I'm at the hospital right now, and I'm seeing soldiers who are talking to me very frustrated because they didn't feel like they were being heard in certain areas. And so we are dealing with the reality that until we win the information war, our Western partners won't feel the pressure. But we must win the information war both here on the streets of Ukraine and in the newsrooms in New York and London and elsewhere. This is why I also had the controversy, but felt I needed to do it. When CNN called our fighters Western mercenaries, I had to call for the boycott of CNN and risk my position simply because Russia would have used that as propaganda if CNN didn't change the wording. Luckily, it worked, and I received the apology on behalf of all of the foreign soldiers, and they changed their wording to foreign fighters. But every time there's a slip up by our partners, the slip ups aren't coming from you and the other leaders here in Ukraine as much as it is, almost never, as much as it is coming from our Western partners who don't understand that Russia's main success in this invasion was on the information front. But their propaganda efforts are the best in the world. Their propaganda, they should not be able to hide behind, just because they're given a television show, doesn't stop them from being war criminals. Then how can we attack Russian fascists with all of our weapons? And our weapons include DRGs. Our weapons include diversions. Our weapons include saying this is not free speech. You know, Solivov and Skabeva and all of them are committing crimes against humanity.
So
we saw what the truth was with Dugan's daughter. They put out a book on the 1-year anniversary of her death. That goes to show that who she was in their eyes. It wasn't some woman who was accidentally killed. This was an evil creature who died a death they deserved for trying to genocide innocent people.
Yeah, that is true. It doesn't mean that we don't have to target Maria Zakharova too.
Of course. She was the first person to attack me. It was April of 2022. And she attacked me before anyone even knew my name outside of USA, outside of Nevada. And she called me a creature who only hung around with gangsters, meaning our soldiers. And the worst part with her is she gets accepted in the same way that a State Department spokesperson would be accepted.
It's weird that she would be fooled by this. Like, why would why would this guy be calling you? Why would he be in contact with you? Why do you think you're that important? I don't get it. We can do so much better than Biden or Trump because we've got West this time. I do think West is a tremendous upgrade from West and Claudia Dela Cruz, who I will be voting for in California. Luckily in California, everybody who's running actually gets on the ballot here. So Cornel West will be on the ballot, and someone even to the left of Cornel West, believe it or not, Claudia de la Cruz, who's calling for an end of capitalism, will be on. Yeah. So anyway, we'll be on the ballot. But anyway, I think I might play a little bit more of this and then go ahead and close out so I can have a little time to get off today before it have like a 90 minutes before the next show. So let's play a little bit more of it. I'm going to move it forward to another part because the conversation takes place in two different places. So let's see if I. All right. So how about I just go to the other video because they cut it, they spliced it. This is the long version. That's the 20-minute, the full version. All right, let me see if I can just fast forward here. Let's see if it allows me this time.
To help you to defend
it. So you know the process. You very well, Mr. Deputy.
Okay,
it
let's
was
go here.
terrible. I think it is not fair. It is extremely bad for our reputation to do that.
Yes, sir. It was political, as you very well understand politics. I made the statement that Russian propagandists will be hunted down, and I refuse to apologize for that statement. And what's not being said is that I was the expert witness in a case against a Russian agent in Kharkiv. And so by knocking me out of this position, it made my testimony less effective. So you know the process. On Tuesday morning, sir, I was fired. At 10 o'clock on Tuesday, I was reinstated. By Tuesday night, I received the analytics report. The investigation was already done, and I was cleared. On Wednesday morning, sir, I was told that the ministry was completely defending me. On Wednesday afternoon, an email was sent to an American politician regarding me from an official email address of the government stating that I was already cleared. And then, sir, 2 hours later, the message appears that I was suspended.
But who was the person who ordered to do that?
I was told, sir, that it came from the highest levels. That's all I was told. And General Tansora was the one who decided on the suspension and the language of the suspension.
When you are talking about high level, what is a person?
I was told that it came from New York, sir, on the trip that the government is on currently.
High level is New York. What does New York have to do with Ukraine? How is the highest levels of decision making coming out of New York if Ukraine is a sovereign country? All of those that support Ukraine, this Ukraine war. Answer that question.
Oh my God! It's so Ministry of Defense of Ukraine tried to help you, to defend you, but someone from New York decided to do that. Oh my God! It is so pity.
Yes, sir. I think I was told that they had to make a big deal and to shut me up in order to possibly get help. So that's why I understand it. I understand.
This person is about just being in the spotlight. This is a attention seeker. I had the same feeling then too when they were trying to get on RBN show. I had the same sort of reaction. Let's see if it plays. It may not. When I move forward, Twitter doesn't play. Let's rewind it. I'm sorry. Let's refresh it. Or actually, that's it. So I'll close it out here. It's not a big deal. We will close it here, and with my final sort of comments, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this person. where they're gonna pop up again. This person is all about attention, so I'm curious where they're gonna pop up again. They just want to go from one viral event to another viral event to another viral event. Anything that keeps them in the news, in people's eyes, in topics of discussions. That's what this person is going to be doing. So I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years we saw this person on America's Got Talent playing the piano. Or we see them, doing some other thing that brings them attention. So that's just what this person's about. All right, let's get to some super chats. I read that one. Got a super sticker from African King Queens. Please subscribe. That's their name. And then it's in the Nader one. I read the Nader. I can just pop the ones I read. I'll just pop up and without reading them. This one says, "Damn," from England. Gets Nazis demonetized. Thank you for your super chat, all of you. Social emotional learning and LVMs Incorporated. Thank you all for all of your likes. If you haven't hit that like button yet, please do so. Last thing before I go, in little more than an hour and about 75 minutes, we're going to be back here at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 on the West Coast to cover the GOP debate. Make sure you come back. Nick and I will be hosting. I'm not sure if we confirmed it. Kit was here last time, but Kit cannot make this one. So we'll see if we're able to find a fill-in for Kit. If not, you'll just see Nick and I here. Maybe another RBN member, maybe JB or not. No, Wednesday, not JB. Or Rome or somebody will drop in. But outside of that, I'm going to get going. Let's see here. Is there anything? Let's look at my feed and see if there's anything I should just mention, anything breaking I should mention before I get out of here. Okay, I'll end with this. This is a good one. Nick did a video on this.
Posting and sharing.
Nick did a video on the Canadian Nazi scandal. So let's end with Nick. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you come back at 8:30 in a little over an hour to watch the GOP debate coverage right here live on RBN. And I leave you with that. Here is Nick.
Justin Trudeau in Canada is still dealing with the fallout of hosting and chairing a Nazi in the Canadian Parliament. Canada was so embarrassed, they are now extraditing the Nazi they just celebrated to Poland. We got him. This was such an embarrassing moment that Canada is now giving up the Nazi that they've been sheltering until he was the tender age of 98. Now Canada and Western officials are forced to give the funniest apology I ever heard in my life. Oops, I accidentally cheered for a Nazi, my bad. Another country apologizing is Germany for having the Germany ambassador to Canada at the event cheering a Nazi. A newly militarized Germany cheering on a Nazi. Not a good look. You have Justin Trudeau handling this as well as you expect he would. Justin Trudeau is blaming Russian disinformation for the fact that his government cheered on a Nazi war criminal. Fucking Russian disinformation tricking us into cheering for Nazis in our government. Not our fault we are collaborating with Nazis in Ukraine. The Russians tricked us. How dumb do they think we are? Those guys, the Nazis were never defeated. They was absorbed by the West.